Okay, we'll call to order this work meeting of the City of East Bethel City Council. Do a little adjustment on the agenda as it was previously written. We'll change items number 1 and 2 to items number 4 and 5 on the agenda. So we'll start off with the HRA discussion on goal setting. Do we need to do and adopt the agenda motion and all that for a work meeting?
No.
I didn't think so. So you want to kick it off there?
Sure. Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you. We had a discussion before about HRA, and I'm assuming that this will be a multi-part discussion maybe as we kind of walk through some of these ideas on HRA. What I did first of all here, just to kick us off, was to research Minnesota state statute as it relates to HRAs. That's 469.001 to 469.047. And essentially, an HRA is to provide a sufficient supply of adequate, safe, and sanitary dwellings in order to protect the health, safety, morals, interesting, and welfare of the citizens of the state, to clear and develop blighted areas, to perform those duties according to comprehensive plans, to remedy the shortage of housing for low and moderate income residents, and to redevelop blighted areas in situations in which private enterprise would not act without government participation or subsidies. And then it goes on to talk about cities of the first class, which we are not. But it also kind of drills down a little bit on substandard slum or blighted areas which cannot be redeveloped without government assistance. There's a shortage of decent, safe, and sanitary dwelling accommodations according to persons of low income and their families at rentals they can afford, and shall declare that there's a need for housing and redevelopment authority to function in the city. So this city went through that process in establishing their HRA, and essentially, it also goes on to say that, in situations where buildings endanger life or property by fire or other causes in the original land planning, lot layout, and conditions of title in the area. And Continental Communities kind of comes to mind, when I'm reading that part of the statute. But at any rate, that kind of gives just a quick snapshot of what an HRA from a Minnesota state statute standpoint is responsible for. So I know that there's some, I think if I'm not mistaken, it'll be somewhere in the $25,000 range. It's a quarter-cent sales tax that is given back to communities for housing purposes, low to moderate income housing. So that's something that'll be coming available at some point. I'm sure it'll be structured such that if we don't have projects for that, then that'll go back to, the pool, and then those communities that do have projects would be able to draw from that pool. And so it boils down a lot to policy and what policies you folks want to set, and that's kind of setting up for what an HRA discussion should be. Is what should the policy be for the HRA in this city? Are there sites that we can contact the landowners and say, are you interested in selling these? Are you interested in getting rid of them, such that the city could possibly buy them, clean them up, make them available for a higher and better use maybe than what they currently are. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about a couple of properties around. Some will have gas tanks still in the ground, and others that would possibly fit this category. Funding, of course, is your primary concern. Is how do you then fund this? You can bond for it if you want, with the understanding that when you sell it, you're going to recapture that money and essentially pay off the bonds. Or if you have dollars put aside, such as either the state dollars coming in or HRA levy dollars annually, you would then build those up to a point where something could be purchased and then turned. And the question then always becomes for councils, do you give that land away as an incentive then? Do you sell it, do you sell it for more than you paid for it if you got a good deal on it? Those are the questions. I know we have right now the Taylor Street property, we've talked about that a little bit. And kind of the goal of the council is to bring in retirement home type of projects that, kind of a structured setup so that they would potentially move from those to the apartment complex to provide a little more help in retirement years or memory care or whatever services they offer there. I did speak with a gentleman who's looking to develop something about that size. We've spoken with other developers as well that have been interested in that Taylor Street property. But that's kind of similar to, I think that was acquired for the road project, if I'm not mistaken. Roads, city and sewer that went through there. So the city is in ownership of that, but then the discussion could go further into, do you start proactively identifying blighted properties around the city that you would like to potentially purchase, willing seller, willing buyer scenario, and then set a goal of getting those properties cleaned up and on the market again. So just wanted to kind of lay that out there for you folks, kind of more of a conversation, and see where you potentially want to take it. So,
You guys have any thoughts on the matter?
Well, I was thinking about it, and it's been discussed of if we get bonding from the state for water tower at Sims, that there is a property there that, in some people's opinion, could be blighted, and that if we do get that money from the state, that the HRA funds could go towards either dealing with that property or for something else in that area that isn't covered by any of the bonds that would help the city either develop or otherwise. So
You thinking of the southeast corner? Is that
northeast
Sims?
northeast corner.
northeast? Sims.
Well, if the money's earmarked from the state for the sewer, water, and whatever, I don't think we can divert it into doing other projects to fix up blighted properties. I mean, say, well, hey, wait a minute, you guys, we gave you the money to do this and now you're doing that. I'm sure there's some kind of guidelines on there that, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah.
yeah, no, the state would, in the bill, it would identify exactly what you're seeking the money for, and that has to be spent specifically on that. And if it changes at all, you have to go back and get, new language on that.
Yeah, I'm not saying use
Yeah.
the bonding money for this. I'm saying in conjunction with this project.
Right.
If we want to improve one of the corners there or
Yep.
something else that is identified or the state money can't be used for, that we would like to accomplish in that area to help improve it. That would be one area that when you pull all the money together, it can help improve a lot.
But now, are you talking, whatever properties the city has, we're kind of stuck with them because I don't believe we can sell them if they're tax forfeited? If I'm not mistaken, am I correct in that area?
There's, to my knowledge, 3 types of properties that are municipal owned or local government owned. Some of them require a 25-year period of time elapsed before you can consider selling them. Some of them, depending on how they were acquired, may be able to be put back on the market, and yet some of them you have to have an appraisal done and then sell it back to the state of Minnesota, essentially purchase it to be able to turn around and put it back on the market. So the other item that comes to mind with the HRA purchasing properties is if we were to get into the negotiations of real estate, In order for that transaction to take place, we're gonna have to even up on taxes. So if there are properties that are outstanding in taxes for years and years and years and years, it may not be beneficial for the city to wanna get involved in purchasing that real estate because of the amount of outstanding taxes. So
Yeah.
those,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
those
the
are all
taxes are gonna
very,
get
It's
paid.
gonna
those
be
are all
a
very,
parcel by parcel.
yeah, relevant
situation,
considerations
yeah.
when you're looking at utilizing money to put stuff back on the market. Some of them are you're probably gonna wanna steer away from.
I guess when I think I kind of brought this up, this topic, and my thoughts were twofold. One is that if you're gonna have a levy, the monies for it should be used what the levy said they would be used for. Okay, and I don't think that's been the case so far. They've been diverted into, you know,
No more shell games.
adjacent uses, we'll put it that way. But anyway, the other thing is that unless I'm mistaken, if you have a clearly defined set of goals, you have a lot better chance of leveraging whatever seed money you can put together into matching grant money or more than matching grant money than if it's just kind of a loose, you know, amorphous collection of objectives, you know. The clearer we can be about what it is we want to accomplish, the better our odds are, whether it's with our own money or whether it's with money leveraged by state, federal, whatever, private interests. You know, you could throw in a couple mil, Matt, that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, you're good for a mil.
I should clarify too, right now, the state law for the quarter-cent sales tax that we all pay into for housing
Right.
has to go through the county HRA, which this city belonged to at one point, but then got out of. And so some cities are kind of caught in that in between right now, East Bethel being one of them. And so there may be some legislative support on that coming this next season, the next session rather, for getting that changed so that the cities that are paying in, East Bethel being one of them, has an option to get it out even though they're not part of a county HRA. If you get back into the county HRA, you cannot ever leave it again, so.
Well, the relief came because the city sued Anoka County for $750,000. And the next year, the legislature changed some laws so that couldn't happen again.
Right.
But initially, in 2011, when I came in, we had looked at the HRA as a means, because during the glorious plans of the sewer water district, that area was our main street, and so we should probably make that look pretty good. So why don't we work with the businesses and clean up the frontages and, you know, make the buildings look decent? Not necessarily change the businesses, but clean the place up. And over time, the shell games began, and the money started getting moved from here to here to here, and
As it stands right now, the HRA dollars, it's a pretty low levy, and the majority of which goes towards the staff time to
Yeah,
manage
it's
HRA.
like $77K a year, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so essentially that's trading, hours essentially for what staff is putting into HRA and compensating the general fund for that. So no shell games in the sense of money going anywhere else. I think there's about, if I'm not mistaken, around $12,000 or something left over. Not a whole lot to do, anything with. The HRA, the formation of an HRA essentially is a tool in the toolbox. In the event it's needed, you have that authority to purchase a blighted property if you're faced with having to purchase that. If you didn't have that tool in the toolbox, you'd have to go through the whole process of setting it up before you could purchase that. So it's, for all intents and purposes, the HRA in East Bethel has kind of been on, I don't know, life support maybe right now, and not really being used. And so that's kind of the question. I think, as you enter on 65, enter into East Bethel, I think there's some properties, some commercial properties that are, maybe don't look the best. And
Well, that gets to the priorities.
right.
So what are the priorities? Are they priority commercial and secondarily residential, or vice versa? Is it just to help clean up? Is it, you know,
Yeah.
beyond that, architectural or whatever?
I mean, let's say a business that doesn't look very well, one of the first ones you see when you come into the city, goes for sale. You know, does the city then want to step in and say, yeah, we'll entertain buying that?
Can
Or-
the city buy a property that's on the open market without any constraints?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's a useful question to have the answer to, yeah.
So, I mean, that's not to say that the private market wouldn't step in and say, I want that business right there, and I'm gonna,
Oh, sure, yeah.
tear it down and build this up, and it's gonna look great. I mean, that could very well be. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where the,
It's not something we want to do, it's not like.
right,
Yeah.
right.
We're
You
looking
would
at-
enter into a competitive bidding war with a municipal unit of government and private entity that's probably got a little bit deeper of a pocket for investment. So that's
Yeah.
just a risk you take when you enter into those type of
Yeah.
real estate transactions, just like anything, right?
Yeah,
There's
and
always risk inherent
I
with
don't-
purchase.
Yeah,
If
and
the-
I don't think we're looking to get into the business of real estate development, you know, as a municipality.
If
What does Cambridge do with their HRA? You must have one, right?
Yeah, we own an apartment building. We invest in other senior living. So our money in Cambridge is utilized to repair the apartment building, maintenance.
What is the levy per year?
I don't know what it is.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking I should prepare for this one, so.
Well,
I don't have the
I'm
number off
looking
the
to get
top of
some
my head.
ideas. I mean, East Bethel has been a weak link in the chain for years, and if
Sure.
we're talking about subsidizing it or putting money in there to do something, you know, you gotta know what other cities do. I have no clue. I'll be honest with you.
Other cities generally get into maybe slightly below market senior housing. You know, like a apartment complex is commonly what an HRA gets involved in.
But do they bond for money or do
sure.
they
Yep.
levy for it?
No, they generally bond for it, and then the levy pays the debt service for
And
that
that
over-
puts them in the business of property ownership and
Yes, it does.
management.
And management,
Yeah,
yes.
So you're replacing appliances, air conditioners,
Yep.
new
Heating
doors.
units.
We continuously in Cambridge have requests to new carpet, new tile,
Yeah.
new electronic doors at the
Again,
front.
I'm revealing too much about my political bent, I guess, but I don't believe in government ownership and operation of businesses as a rule.
Yeah.
I think it's an unfair competitive factor in the market.
Right, so that would be in a situation where the, private market is not engaging in that, but you have an imminent need for something, and the private
Right,
market
right.
just isn't stepping up. And you wanna keep your retired folks in your community
And my
as
first
opposed to.
inclination is to ask the person who's insisting it's an imminent need, where's your checkbook? That's my first question is, instead of looking at us, you're the one who thinks it's so imminent, let's, pull out your checkbook.
Yeah, there's no doubt in a senior housing complex, I know the county owned 4 of them,
Yeah,
4 or 5 of them. We were constantly replacing Magic Pack heating systems because they didn't make those anymore. You had to go to a different size one, or it was a constant headache.
and I can see doing that with a government ownership aspect, like a utility. Utilities have defined rates of return on the invested capital. Okay, so there's no games of we're gonna make more money if we play this game or that game, So that's kind of, I can see that scenario, but it should be at a higher level than just East Bethel. It should be on a regional or statewide or beyond level, in my opinion.
So there is sometimes overlap a little bit with your EDA and the HRA when it comes to commercial type of,
Yeah, yeah.
work. And either one can do the function. It's not, the goal is obviously to identify those areas where you want improvement and to proactively go after them, purchase them. If there's a sale that's languishing out there, just not selling, the city steps in. And we often get times calls of what does the city own, and I might be interested in something. But that's kind of where an HRA can potentially go, if you wanna go there.
How much money are we talking about a year coming in like that?
Well, the levy is 77K at present.
Yeah, I mean, we can run an analysis on that of what other HRAs are doing, but I would say it's probably 250 minimum
250 minimum for what?
for a levy.
As far as what it should be?
As far as if you're going to start building up a chest of money to be able to make these purchases and move some puzzle pieces around the board, you would have to, 12,000 a year isn't gonna do it, obviously.
Well, the
250
12,000 is because of the bleed
Right.
off of the other 65, you know?
Even 77,000 at today's price of commercial property, I mean,
Oh, yeah, I know.
if it's $1 million
It's just-
commercial property, you've got 4 years of banking some dollars to be
It's
able to pay cash
project,
on
it's
it.
project management money.
Right.
Put together the project, package it, and then deal with people who might wanna do something with it, yeah.
And everything along the corridor, I think is not, that's not something that's gonna languish necessarily if it's pad ready and, available, for development. If
Yeah.
if you gotta take a building down and clean up refuse and everything else, people might shy away from that. But there's properties that are selling out there right now. I mean, Boat World purchased one right next door, and there's some other ones that will probably be going for sale, soon here. There's some that need to hook up to city sewer and water, and that kind of changes the thinking as far as ownership goes, and so.
Any other thoughts among council members or staff?
I was just, Matt, I didn't confirm, and I remember early on in the conversation, now the sales tax money coming for housing does not have to be spent. It can be spent in, I think there's a 3-year window where you can hold on to it before you have to spend the first year.
Sure.
And then then it would multiply itself out, so you wouldn't have to decide on that.
Is it 25,000? Was that correct on that?
I'm not sure.
Oh.
I was trying to find Cambridge's number, what we levy, just to answer your question, but,
And I'm not even sure if rules and guidance have come out on
on
this. And,
how to spend and what, it's all
But
fairly
again,
new.
getting back to the starting points, for me, the starting points seem to be the priorities.
Right.
You know, it was sold to the residents of East Bethel as an HRA, not as a supplement to pay the staff specifically, I don't believe so. I don't recall it being sold as that.
Sure.
And so it's just like, okay, well, if that's what the priorities are supposed to be, then what are our priorities as a community? First, second, third, just 3. That's all it takes to accomplish 90% of whatever we're gonna do. And it's not enough money to, in and of itself to accomplish a whole lot, but at least if we can focus on what our priorities are, that would be a helpful step. So with that, what's our next step on this topic as far as putting together some priorities? Would it be you and Aaron putting your massive brains together and coming up with a list, or?
Well, again, I think, one of your priorities is cleaning up blighted properties. So identifying what properties might fit that category. A second one would be housing, low-income housing. That may or may not be a priority.
For me, it's a priority in the current economic realities. It's just it's not one that we can do in and of ourselves, or that there's, people in East Bethel, I can't imagine them being,
Right.
being hot to trot on that one when they're having trouble affording their own properties. Yeah.
And then another one would be unsanitary or unsafe, conditions. Like, for example, if there are septic systems that are failing and people can't afford to, replace them, we might, invest in a line to reach them so that sewer can be hooked up, or something along that line. You can look at those type of projects too. They can get expensive though, drag and pipe.
Well, why don't we plan to have, and whoever you want to participate, just have a sit down sometime in the next 3 weeks and bring it up with some ideas on the priorities. Where would these blighted residences with the resistance to improving the conditions, where would that fall in this scenario? You know, people who, you know, there have been complaints of adjacent properties, so it's driven by complaints. They've been notified that the situation is not okay, and there's no motivation or willingness or whatever to correct the situation. Does that factor into this at all?
We're gonna be talking about that kind of on the next two, items
okay.
on the agenda.
Well, then why
but,
don't we just go into them then?
But I think that's gonna fall more into an abatement conversation.
Right, yeah. Abatement's what I'm
yeah.
talking about, yeah.
But if there's, you know, say there's a known violator that's trying to sell their property or something, the city might step in and buy it and clean it and, you know, and resell it at that point. That's an option.
Well, I know the city used to buy properties on Coon Lake at one point, and they own one that's on Lincoln and Cedar. Got a garden and a park, it's about all that's there, or a park bench. I mean, the properties are so tiny.
Right.
Yeah, I
That
was
they don't-
actually thinking when I brought it up, we can go right into the other thing is like bridge capital. So if the city pays the cost of abatement, and instead of waiting forever until, you know, the person decides to sell the property and it's attached to the sale, that, yeah, you know, it provides bridge capital instead of waiting,
Sure.
so. But maybe we should just go right into the next item. So,
Okay.
number 2 now is Jeremy Foss abatement.
So, Mr. Mayor, the next two items are people that we've put together kind of a laundry list of times we've made contact with them over the years. And the question becomes, I mean, it used to be, I think, where staff used to direct legal, you know, at that point. And I think the new process that we have in place is to bring it to council, kind of explain the whole situation, lay it out, and get your blessing if that, you know, if that is the case, on whether we start pursuing this in the next capacity, that is a legal capacity at this point. So Aaron's put together a rundown of these properties, and turn it over to him.
Do you wanna switch over to my screen? I can provide a little bit of history here. So the first one on the new agenda is 921 235th Avenue Northeast. The city was first introduced to this property back in 2018. You can see we submitted a notice of multiple violations. On October 30th of 2018, we provided a second notice because nothing had been taken care of. On October 22nd of a year later, it appears that there was some movement, and so the city slowed down on pursuing the cleanup. However, it looks like then back 2019, only a month later, there was a stop in progress, and we submitted a final notice for the same violations. November of 21, so there's a year or gap or so there, so there must have been some cleanup, and then we reverted back to the same behavior, went back to storing of vehicles, commercial vehicles, very similar violations. January of 21, we, at the city administrator's direction, sent the occupant a final notice because of all the previous history. They were issued a citation March of 22, the first citation, second citation April of 22, third citation June of 22. It looks like all the citations were paid by July, and things were cleaned up, and now we're back to essentially the square one again, where there's an accumulation of vehicles. The neighbors are now getting a hold of the MPCA and the Anoka County due to antifreeze, engine fluids, potentially burying a car in the backyard near the wetland. They believe that their water tastes different now, and as it continues. So Staff have periodically noticed the resident posting and selling vehicles and vehicle parts on Facebook Marketplace sites. He's been cited multiple times for not having a home occupation. I did go out to the site today and took some photographs. Here's the street view of the house. You can see a stockpile of vehicles here off to the back corner. He has a second driveway, which he's been cited multiple times for. He's not allowed a second driveway because of his residential zone. You can see vehicles lined up here. The city owns property across the pond, so I was able to access the back side of the property, and what I can count in the picture is 11 vehicles here. There's a flatbed tow truck. Here's a skid steer, another skid steer. Here's another truck, a trailer. There's a crushed vehicle on a trailer. There's more cars up along in the side yard here. So clearly we're back to the same behavior. The city steps in, we clean it up, and then there goes a little bit of lull, and then we go back to the same behavior again. So we've reached the stage where we need to know, is council comfortable with us submitting this to our attorney for criminal charges, or should we initiate the notice citation process all over again, which we've embarked on since 2018 and haven't had real results?
Can you email these to us?
I would hesitate to do that.
Well, you don't have to email the pictures, but I mean, the data that you were talking,
Oh, the calendar stuff, I can do that, yeah.
my brain isn't
Yeah.
keeping it all in
I
quite
think
that quick.
if we decide to go legal, these pictures would be used in evidentiary light, and we don't want to make them public at this point in a work meeting by distributing them, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like today when we were out there.
Have there been discussions?
With the
Correct.
occupant, with the
Yeah.
homeowner, not during the most recent stages, but this is a overview of the property from earlier this spring, where you can see the vehicles started to accumulate, but then the pictures I took today, there are significantly more. This property's only allowed one driveway access. He, at some point, reestablished turf, but is now back to using the driveway again. We don't allow commercial vehicles in a residential zone. You can see a bullpen here full of vehicle parts. Here's the commercial tow truck here. 921 235th.
921
235th Avenue.
Yeah,
Is that like a drainage pond back there?
This is, yeah, it connects to Anderson Lake. This is our Anderson
Oh,
Anderson
so-
Park. And this is the next stop from Anderson Park.
Really?
So the neighbors are generating complaints because they don't think the city is responsive. They're going to the MPCA and Anoka County now, environmental, because the city isn't responding. Well, we are responding, and he's coming into compliance, but then when we stop looking, then he reverts back to the same behavior until we get another complaint, and then we start code enforcement again. So.
Yeah.
Home occupation is a problem because we don't allow a home occupation in the residential areas for body parts, auto mechanics, those kind of things. As you know, on his social media sites, he's got, as I mentioned, he's selling cars, selling car parts, selling snowmobiles, other items, junked out cars, which are all prohibited in our current version of a home occupation.
And
So
this is a platted subdivision?
this is a platted subdivision.
don't you need a dealer's license over a certain amount of
If you
cars?
sell 5 or more a year, you should have a permission from your local zoning code or your zoning official to apply for a dealer's license with the Department of Public Safety.
What do the
So-
neighbors think of it?
The neighbors are the ones making the complaints.
Okay, no, you don't need no names. just-
Yeah, no. And part of the home occupation is noise and vibration. In their complaints, they're talking about the skid steers moving around all day, unloading and loading of cars, fluids, all things that we prohibit in a home occupation. So again, we are back to square one, basically, from 2018 when we were first introduced to the problem. This is like the third go-round.
And
So-
what's your recommendation? or either one of you or both.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure we can make contact with them. We can spend the next 3 years trying to get compliance. We probably won't get compliance. And at some point, we need to, lack of a better term, turn up the heat in order to get compliance on this. If I was a neighbor looking at that, I'd probably be a little upset too.
Yeah,
Well, other
So-
than the people on the other side of the lake, looks like there's tree lines that kind of block everything.
Yeah, I can tell you the complaint came from his immediate neighbor. This last one to the MPCA, she was willing to leave her information with them. Anoka County contacted her, and then she was relayed to us through Anoka County Environmental. So we all at this point kind of have a
So from,
known person that signed a complaint with the state that there's a violation happening at her within her neighborhood, so.
so from the county, it falls back into the city's lap to enforce?
Yeah, and if we wanted to turn this over to the county, we certainly could. But they're gonna come to us every time they need documentation or assistance or help so we're in the driver's seat at this point, what we wanna do.
Well, if the county took care of it, they'd pay for it, right? And go after whoever?
Well, once
Versus our expenses, or-
once the county exhausts the fact that maybe he remedies the dumping of antifreeze and oil, we still have, several city code violations, multiple vehicles, junk vehicles, no home occupation. So their enforcement is limited to automobile fluids. So we have a bigger horse in this race, I think, than they do, but they also have some responsibility if we asked them to.
would that be the county or the MPCA
Well, so
as far as the
County
fluids?
environmental.
the fluids went to the county. They forwarded their complaint to Anoka County Environmental Services, who handles automobile reduction yards and fluid storage and disposal.
You know what I'm thinking of, the business on 65. You know the one I'm thinking
Yeah,
about?
that's how we found out that they were there too.
And this is not the same
No,
people?
no.
No.
So Aaron, has anybody actually went out there and talked to him physically, or they just sent letters and stuff to him?
He's been in numerous times, not recently. In the prior cases, he always comes in and pays his fines and cleans it up, and then
Just the
goes back to running
cost
the
of
business
doing
again.
business?
Yeah, I think that's the cost of doing business
I
for him.
suppose,
Pays
yeah.
the fines and then puts her on the back shelf for a little bit, or does it
Starts again.
surreptitiously, and then turns around and gets away with it long enough and gets brave again, or forgets
Yeah.
that the city was involved, and here we are. We're back at square one, like I said, so. And as you can see from that historical document, we started in 2018, and it took us until 2022 to get them all paid up and cleaned up, so that's a lot of staff time, unfortunately. We'll have to do code enforcement inspections and generate letters, and he's refused letters in the past from the city, and then you generate another letter, or we've used the sheriff's office to serve letters before, and so, I mean, it's kind of, I'm assuming it's a game for him to some degree, if he
Yeah.
can avoid it as long as possible.
Well, at this point, he knows he's doing wrong. He's been notified well enough by the city that this is not allowed, and yet he keeps doing it. He's been given plenty of chances already. So at one point, what good are our rules if we don't enforce them?
Well, it's kind of, yeah, and it's kind of like either you spend the money through staff time, or you just bite the bullet and spend it with the attorney, you know? And,
Yeah, the attorney, we spend a flat fee every month for prosecutions, so this would be added to their list of issues they need to deal with, and it would go to court, and a judge would decide what the circumstances would render for punishment, I guess.
Somebody correct me, but it doesn't seem to me there's much choice here. Cause we're, I mean.
I mean, we can embark on another 3-year journey
no,
to
but
try
on
and get
the-
it to clean up, but.
That's what I mean, is on the regular meeting agenda tonight is advertising for a city planner.
Right,
And that's to lighten the load on you, so you can get more important things done than all the things that they could be learning on and all that. And, so it seems kind of counterintuitive to do one and not pursue the other, you know? That's my thoughts. What do you guys think?
No, I agree with you, Kevin.
No way, that's your first mistake right there. No.
No, if it's covered by our attorney,
on the podium there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not extra cost to the city, correct?
No.
So in that nature, I mean, we have an attorney for a reason.
Yeah.
In this case, it's a clear reason.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we should utilize it.
I would anticipate we'll spend probably an 8-hour day doing the report to the attorney, but once we turn it over to the attorney, then it's done. It's out of our hands. And we need to, generate a report based on the historical record so that when it does
Yeah.
get to court, the judge can see. And we want to make sure we have accurate facts in there and not generic dates, because they're going to want to know. Pictures and
Are we in agreement that,
Well, as long as it don't become a slippery slope and it's found that, well, this is kind of easy way to do it, let's eliminate our normal steps now and let's just go right to the attorney.
No, we'll continue the process. This was at your guys' request to bring these.
You
when
gotta
they
bring
get-
it up.
When they get to this level, to come to you before we take the next step. So that's why we're here today. This is the first one since you introduced the new idea of wanting to see the cases. This is the first one that's reached that stage, apparently, with,
well,
The past history.
we appear to be in agreement
okay,
that.
Okay.
very good.
We have no choice.
All right.
Okay, the second one is the item 3, or the Magnuson rental property. There's a rental property along 65 that we have been communicating with, trying to get them to comply with the rental ordinance, trying to inspect the property, make sure it's safe living conditions, et cetera. And there's been a failure to return any sort of letters sent out, no one answers the doors.
Did you say this is on 65?
I believe it's on 65, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, right next to, who was the gentleman that came in the other day?
Greg, I can pull it up here.
Yeah.
And it's a
Greg right
house
there.
or a business?
It's a house.
It's a house.
Okay.
If you want to bring up my screen, I can. So the complainant lives here. This house is what he's identifying as a rental house. It's owned by someone else, not in our city, but there are people living there.
And whereabouts is this approximately?
Across from.
Just south of Cooper's Corner, across from
Right.
the trucking facility there,
All right.
or North County Concrete.
North Country Concrete. Yep. B&D Trucking.
It's on the service road.
Yeah, almost up to Council Member Miller's neighborhood there. A little farther up.
I don't live that far up.
But yeah, we sent a certified letter saying, hey, we've got junk and debris in the yard that we need cleaned up, and we have a rental ordinance in the city of East Bethel. You don't live in the home, you live in another city. There's occupants of this home. It appears to be a rental. Please fill out a rental application. And we got a signed receipt back that the letter was received, but no one reached out to us. So by the end of the month, we will be sending another letter, trying to get a response before citations start getting issued for
How long has this been?
non-compliance.
How long has this been dealing with that?
Greg's been complaining for some time.
Who's
my-
been
Greg,
complaining?
the neighbor.
Oh, okay.
My understanding is he would only meet with the city administrator, the previous city administrator, when he came into the building. And so now that that administrator's gone, we have a new city administrator. We've had, our department has met with him now, and he's filled out formal complaints, and we're moving forward with the new process. So this is the first return since we've sent the letter out.
Does the person who owns the property, they live in Minnesota?
They do.
At Ham Lake.
I'm like,
So this boils down to kind of a public safety scenario. I mean, there can be some unsafe living conditions, electrical conditions, things of that nature that
Right.
is one of the, I was a landlord at one point. I never cared much for the rental licensing because I ran a decent house, a nice house. That's not the case everywhere. And so it's there for a reason. If there's nothing to see, they come in, they check, I mean, they're out just that
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
If there's things to see, and things that are mold in the basement or hanging electrical wires or, you know, leaking pipes or whatever the case is, something where people can get injured or sick or ill from it, those things have to be fixed if they want to rent. And so this is, you know, again, we can go through this process of sending letters and citations, and they probably won't get paid, and it's kind of one of those gray areas now of do you engage the attorneys to send, you know, documentation that's a little more serious now.
How long has this been going on?
Well, according to the complaint, it's a long time, but we got his formal written complaint early July. So we
But
started.
since Jack was here, obviously.
But yeah, it's been going on for much longer. He was only willing to meet with Jack until now, so I have no idea. And none of that was ever documented. We, in our code enforcement system, there's a complaint about work without a permit at that location, but nothing else regarding a rental license, so.
What are our options as far as, assuming you have a persistently uncooperative property owner? What are our options as far as calling for an inspection of the property, just like a welfare check? We just want to make sure that the place is safe, you know?
So the complainant has called the sheriff's office multiple times, and the deputies have responded and been there for a variety of things. And like, I think the last one was because there were kids yelling or something. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing whatever he can to get people there to understand that this is not, shouldn't be in his neighborhood, so.
We've gotten no response from this guy at all?
Nope, the receipt was, actually the receipt wasn't signed for, so the postal service just delivered. We have no proof that it was delivered other than the receipt came back, and the letter has not been returned to us as undeliverable, so in our world, that is as good as delivered, but we don't know if they actually signed for it or not. I mean, if the person we were intending it to get to got there, or if it was just delivered to the mailbox because there was no one home.
Are we sending it to that house, or are we sending it?
Nope, we're sending it to the owner's house.
Owner's house.
Yeah.
So what would our next step be, to have the attorney send a letter to the owner's house?
Or we generate another letter and have the sheriff's office deliver it for us. That way
But I
we
mean,
verify that it's been hand delivered to.
Would it hold more ground though if we had the attorney's name on it versus just us if they're not responding already to us? You think?
Possibly, yeah.
Cause I think
Is this
maybe,
also,
my opinion is,
included in our
that-
monthly?
my
Excuse me.
opinion would be that I would think they would act a little different when they see an attorney's name on it.
Right.
You know, maybe, but then maybe not.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Is
Mayor.
this also included in our monthly stipend with the attorney?
Yes, this would be prosecution.
As they say in parts of the country, it couldn't hurt. You know, I mean, if
And
Why
if they
not?
come into compliance, obviously prosecution's dropped at that point.
oh yeah,
So
yeah, I'm not looking to get into
no
it.
one's gonna pursue it
No,
when
just-
there's compliance. No judge will take that as
Well, I mean, nobody's
responsible.
saying it, but we're, you know,
Oh, all we want is compliance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
All we want is
if it's a
compliance.
rental, just fill out the license. It's a
Yeah.
good, it's a 2-year
if it's-
license,
yeah,
let us come and do the
year
inspection, make sure things are safe, and we're
In and
done.
out.
You know.
Yeah.
hello, Attorney Larson.
Hello. I don't want to be interrupting. Are you still working on your work session?
Yeah,
Come on in, come on in.
come on in, make yourself to home.
So if that's the will of the council, we can certainly have that letter drafted and see if we
Yeah.
can try that angle
See
to
if that wakes them
penetrate.
up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never know.
It's not that, you know, it's not that we enjoy doing this, that we would rather have full compliance and just make it easy, but,
Yep,
but unfortunately, there's some lack of willingness to comply here.
Well, I mean, rental properties, and maybe it's my bias from living near Coon Lake Beach for 28 and a half years, but rental properties are often rented for purposes that aren't exactly up and conforming with current laws, you know,
And-
put it that way.
And Mr. Mayor, that may be one of the fears that is, in there right now, is perhaps there's
There is issues.
people that shouldn't be in there, whatever the case is.
Doing-
That's not
doing
what the
things
city
they
is
shouldn't
looking
be doing,
for,
yeah.
we're looking for safety-related.
Right.
I know on
things.
Coon Lake Beach, it was meth houses.
Right.
20 years ago and sooner. People would rent a house and next thing you know, there's odd smells coming from it and people coming and going all times of the night, and didn't take a whole lot of time to figure out what was going on. It wasn't good. That seems to have run its course.
Thankfully.
Well, unfortunately, people who get involved in that tend to run their course.
Right.
You know, and it's not good.
And I don't want to give the council the idea that we have an infraction and we just want to go
No.
legal on it.
No,
You know,
no, it's just a
we'll
black
go
hole
through
at
the
this point.
process of sending letters and that does take a significant amount of staff time to do.
Yeah, we can't waste this,
documentation and everything, and
can't waste our staff's time.
but when I bring some of these up to Nick, and Nick kind of hangs his head from a history of non-compliance, it's pretty easy to pick up what he's laying down.
Yep.
That that it's a
Oh my
difficult
God, I
one.
have to work.
Yeah, what the heck's wrong with me?
Well, it's I can see where it's challenging and
And frustrating as
right.
can be, yeah.
Right.
Because there is a difference when we want to try and work with the residents or we want to be ignored. Right. And we can't be ignored.
Yeah, our code enforcement letter, the end in our code enforcement letter is encouraging them to reach out to us so that we can facilitate a conversation about how we can help them make their property legal. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a heavy-handed enforcement
No.
letter. Until we reach letter number 4, then the citation accompanies letter number 4. That's when it gets a little more serious. So we take about 3 months to try and help them come into compliance before we get to that language, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Alrighty then.
everyone's okay with that one?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, we've got very little time left here. The next items we may want to push to the next meeting, if you would like.
I would like to know one thing, and that is, because I looked at our ordinances and I looked at the last time they were changed, and that's not a very good indication of the dates things occurred. But if it's possible, it would be good to know the dates of the last time the compensation for council members and commission members was changed.
Yep.
That's a simple question.
Well, staff can certainly research that. We
Yeah.
can bring that back and put this on the next work session that we
Yeah.
have, whether it's the next one or the ones following.
Just a piece of
And,
information we should know.
And we can add to the work session too, because we'll have more time probably to deal with other items, so. Okay,
And that's about it. Anybody else got something for the work session?
Good
No.
to adjourn.
Now we can adjourn and we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock for a regular city council meeting.